Stars might look like simple points of light, but each one is a fascinating object at a different point in its life. Including our own sun, we think that it has about 5 billion years left to live. Each star goes through its own life cycle. It's one thing to read about this, but what if I could photograph it for myself?
Tonight, that's exactly what I'm going to do. The life of a star takes place over the course of billions of years. So to see each stage of this process, I'm going to photograph 3 different objects in the night sky using this telescope, and each one will represent a different phase of a star's life.
We're going to see the towering clouds of star formation.
Right there in those dust clouds, that's where the stars are forming.
The most famous star cluster in the night sky.
You can see the Pleiades right there, 400 light years away.
And the remains of a stellar explosion.
This giant, expanding explosion in space. That's exactly what we're looking at, right here. To see all of these things in detail, we're going to need a good telescope. I'll be using my Red Cat 51, a super sharp refractor telescope, as well as the 533 MC Pro astronomy camera. All of that will be on top of my Star Adventurer GTI mount, which will track the stars so I can take long exposures. It's a great astrophotography rig that will hopefully allow me to see each stage of the stellar life cycle in incredible detail. Our journey begins with star formation, the birth of a star. These happen inside of nebulas, giant regions of gas and dust in space. And a lot of the time, these nebulas are where stars are born. All of that material pulls together and eventually forms a star, and maybe some planets around it. You've probably seen Hubble's famous Pillars of Creation, which is an incredible close-up image of the Eagle Nebula. Inside of these columns of dust are where the stars are forming. One problem with this image is that it's hard to see what's going on inside the Pillars of Creation. Those stars are blocked out by all of that dust. But that changed a few years ago with the James Webb Space Telescope. Hubble operates in visible light, while Webb sees in infrared. The Webb image allows us to peer through some of that dust and get a peek at the stars that are forming within it. The Pillars of Creation are the most famous star-forming region, but this is happening all over the galaxy, including where we're headed tonight.
With clear skies in the forecast, it's time to get everything set up. First, we're headed about 5,000 light-years away to the Rosette Nebula, a star-forming region just to the left of the Orion constellation. Now it's time for my favorite part of the night, watching the first exposure come in. Let's check it out.
Wow, that looks incredible for just a single 3-minute shot. Right there in those dust clouds, that's where those stars are forming.
Now it's time to take as many pictures as I can. After stacking over 5 hours worth of images, I created this final picture. I really like how this one turned out. If these towers of dust remind you of Hubble's Pillars of Creation, that's because they're very similar. This really is the highlight of this image, because it's here where the new stars are forming. And the closer you look, you'll see that the Rosette Nebula is filled with all sorts of different clouds of dust, in all different shapes and sizes. The middle of the Rosette Nebula is a bit hollowed out. It looks like you're peering through a tunnel. It's because these stars in the middle are recently formed ones. These young, hot stars have so much energy, they're pushing away the dust around them, creating a hole in the middle of this nebula. This really is a fascinating region of space, and having now imaged it for the first time, I can definitely see why it's a favorite winter target for amateur astronomers. And that takes us to our next stop on our journey through the life of a star.
Next up is the life of a fully formed star. Now, of course, there are stars everywhere, and besides our sun, they're so far away that they just look like points of light. There are perhaps 100 billion of them in our galaxy alone, and every image I take is filled with stars. Which means that I can point my telescope just about anywhere in the night sky, and we'll see tons of fully formed stars. We're going to go somewhere special, and visit perhaps the most famous group of stars out there, called the Pleiades, and the nebula within it.
Our target is about 400 light-years that way. These stars are so bright that I'm taking shorter exposures this time, 1 minute long each. Here's what a single 1-minute shot looks like. Among these stars lies a giant interstellar dust cloud. To reveal it, we're going to need to photograph these stars for hours. After taking 180 one-minute long shots for a total of 3 hours of exposure time, I put together this image. Look at how many stars you can see here. There must be thousands of them. The Pleiades are the group of stars in the middle. These hot blue stars are so bright that they're lighting up the dust around them. This is actually its own nebula. Most of the time, nebulas are home to star formation, like the rosette that we just saw. That's not the case here. This is a reflection nebula. We can only see it because of the starlight reflecting off of the dust. Scientists think that it's by chance that these stars are moving through this cloud of dust. If the Pleiades were located somewhere else, then this reflection nebula might have been totally invisible.
The last stop on our journey is the end of a star's life. Sometimes they'll just run out of energy and fade away, and we'll never be able to see them again. But that's not always the case. If a star is big enough, it'll go supernova in a massive explosion. There hasn't been one in our galaxy for hundreds of years, but if there was, it would be so bright that we could probably see it even during the day. Fortunately for us, a supernova leaves behind what's called a supernova remnant, the remains of that massive explosion. We're going to visit one that's the result of a star that exploded about 30,000 years ago.
A few days later, clear skies return, and after getting everything set up, I point my telescope about 5,000 light-years away to a supernova remnant called the Jellyfish Nebula. This is a single 4-minute shot we're looking at right now. There's a lot going on in this image, but I want you to pay attention to the bottom half. That's the Jellyfish Nebula right here. It's a supernova remnant. In my last video, we talked about these objects a lot deeper, but this is one of the ways that a star reaches the end of its life. It explodes and goes supernova, leaving behind this giant expanding explosion in space. That's exactly what we're looking at right here. I spend the rest of the night imaging it, capturing almost 4 hours worth of pictures. Here's the final image. This section of the Jellyfish Nebula is where it gets its name from. You can see the expanding filaments from the supernova. The material from what used to be a star has been thrown out into space. This explosion is interacting with the clouds of dust and gas around it, creating this beautiful, complex structure. I find this to be such an interesting part of our night sky, and it's incredible to think that all of this was created from the death of a single star.
Putting all three of these pictures together gives us an understanding of the life cycle of a star, from star formation to fully formed stars to the end of a star's life, which could end up being a supernova. The material from that supernova will drift away and might end up as part of a new cloud of star formation, so in a sense the cycle repeats. It gives us an understanding that these nebulas and star clusters in the night sky, they aren't there randomly, they have a purpose, and there are real natural processes that are going on here. Being able to see these things for myself is one of the reasons why I enjoy this hobby so much. Another reason is that these objects are simply beautiful, and it's amazing that we have the technology for people like you and me to photograph them. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned a thing or two from this video. Leave a comment and let me know which picture you like the best. And until next time, clear skies.